A disappearance shrouded in the mystery of crowded streets. A predator who killed twice, as far as we know, targeting young women with similar characteristics to the victim we are discussing today. Many point to him as the piece that could be behind this terrible event. Welcome to a new video. Today, we are going to talk about the disappearance of María Teresa Fernández. As you have seen over the past few days, we have analyzed the cases of Rocío Waninkoff and Sonia Carabantes, which occurred in 1999 and 2003, respectively. Well, between those two crimes, a young woman named María Teresa Fernández disappeared in Motril, Granada. María Teresa was 18 years old, and she vanished under circumstances that make any investigator's skin crawl. Circumstances remarkably similar to those of Rocío and Sonia. The three have a common link, a geographic and temporal coincidence that we cannot ignore. They all vanished in the middle of local festivals and patron saint celebrations. Rocío was on her way to the fair, Sonia was coming back from one, and María Teresa simply got lost on the way to her own celebration. Today, we are going to analyze why this case remains the open wound of the Costa del Sol. But what really happened that night in Motril? María Teresa Fernández Martín was 18 years old. She was the youngest of three sisters and, according to those who knew her, a cheerful, responsible, affectionate young woman who loved animals. She wasn't a girl who looked for trouble. She was a girl with a future. That Friday, August 18, 2000, her father, Antonio, drove her to the central Avenida de Andalucía in Motril. The plan was simple and, above all, a happy one. María Teresa was going to meet her boyfriend at the beach, and later, they would go together to a concert by the band Café Quijano, which was performing for the city's festival. She got out of the car with the calmness of someone who has a summer night ahead of them. At 9:53 p.m., technology left us the final trace, the last testimony that she was there. She sent a text message to her partner that said, "I might be late, but I'm coming. Wait for me." That message was the final chapter of her life as we knew it. Acquaintances passing by on the avenue saw her walking, looking at her mobile phone, perhaps reading or writing another message. That is the last confirmed image of María Teresa. From that moment on, silence. She didn't make it to the meeting, she didn't make it to the concert, and she didn't come home. The young woman simply vanished into thin air while Motril celebrated its festivities just a few meters away. Upon realizing she hadn't arrived at the meeting point, the fear skyrocketed within minutes. Her boyfriend and her parents began a desperate search through Motril that very night, but the city, in the midst of its festive fervor, had become a labyrinth with no answers. But this is where the story turns dark, very dark. After the arrest of Tony Alexander King for the crimes of Rocío and Sonia, his shadow inevitably fell over María Teresa's disappearance. The young woman's parents, living through an ordeal I wouldn't wish on anyone, decided to do the unthinkable. They met with King in prison. They clung to any possibility, any information, like someone grasping at straws to find their daughter. King, in a psychological game that is hard to stomach, fed the family's desperation. He went as far as to insinuate to them that the same knife that ended the lives of Rocío and Sonia had ended María Teresa's, and he pointed directly at his accomplice, Robert Graham. Was it true? Was King confessing, or was he playing with the pain of broken parents to obtain prison benefits? The police, with the professional rigor that a case like this demands, took note of his words. Searches were carried out and his leads were investigated in detail, but, tragically, the body never appeared. Unlike the other cases, where forensic science allowed the file to be closed, here, uncertainty became a life sentence. But the horror didn't end in King's cell. In December 2008, María Teresa's mother, Teresa Martín, was the victim of a brutal assault in the street. A stranger approached her and, far from trying to rob her, whispered a blood-curdling threat. "The same thing will happen to you as it did to your daughter if you keep talking." That attack, which left her with permanent physical injuries, was definitive proof that someone wanted to silence this case at any cost. It wasn't just a disappearance. It was, and remains, a fight against a wall of silence. But if there is one thing that defines this case, it is the feeling of institutional abandonment. For years, the investigation moved between confusion and paralysis. The file, which remains open in investigating Court No. 5 of Motril, has been a thorny path for the family. It took years, with the case worn down by time, for a specialized team from the National Police, dispatched from Madrid, to take command. These officers reviewed the entire investigation from scratch, reanalyzing every lead, every testimony, and every trace collected during those first, chaotic months, searching for errors that time had tried to erase. The family's frustration reached such a point that, in 2015, they had to make a decision no parent should ever have to make, to request the legal declaration of death for Maria Teresa. They didn't do it out of resignation, nor because they stopped looking for her. They did it out of pure administrative necessity, to avoid legal blockages and complications affecting the future of their other two daughters. It is a cruel paradox. The system that wasn't capable of finding her alive, nor offering answers about her whereabouts, was indeed capable of certifying her death on paper. To this day, although there is no public news, the case remains under review. The struggle of Teresa and Antonio hasn't just been about finding their daughter. It has been a battle against oblivion that has turned Maria Teresa into a symbol for families of the disappeared in Spain, helping, albeit late, to improve search protocols that could have saved so many lives. Maria Teresa is not just a file number. She is the living proof that when justice arrives late, the pain becomes eternal. In the end, what remains is a question that haunts anyone who stops to look at Maria Teresa's case. How many more pieces are missing from this puzzle? Although justice was able to close the circle with the crimes of Rocio and Sonia, the history of a predator who enjoyed years of impunity suggests that the map of his victims might never have been closed for good. Many times, when we think about a crime or a murder, we make the mistake of focusing solely on the violent act itself. But don't just think about that. Think about what is left behind. Think about that mother who was beaten for the simple act of not giving up. Think about the helplessness of a family that, more than 2 decades later, continues to live in the what if. Because life, unfortunately, cannot be rewound. There are no rehearsals, no corrections. You live it continuously, in a single take, just as I do here every time I stand in front of the camera. And when destiny, or the inefficiency of a system that didn't know how to see what was right in front of it, take someone away from you, the feeling of guilt and emptiness is something that stays with you for the rest of your days. Maria Teresa is not just an open case in the Motril courthouse. It is a reminder that justice is not always an automatic process. It is a responsibility that, when it fails, leaves scars that no sentence, no matter how long, can ever erase. Thank you for joining me in this analysis, for not forgetting, and for helping us give a voice to those the system preferred to silence. I'm John Crimes, and I'll see you in the next video.